shortly. Down here, maybe put them right in here.
Number 695. 15 at Weddington Awaken Restoration.
Tram that works on equaling pressures. And that's a spindle from inside of one. So these go up and down. There's a big rubber disc that sits in there, and there's another rubber top hat that sits on there, and they just slide up and down.
To open the valve?
Yeah, that's it. But being brass, they wear.
Diaphragm then.
imagine they're all bringing their back to the wall. Well, there's a bit of writing about it then.
Putting that in you. Built up? No. Oh, right. I should imagine it was, yeah. What you want to do is put much food in there, and what you want to do is put all those chips on and fill it and rush extract it down. Yeah, carriage and wagon, that's still a small one for Locomotive Park.
Hi, Ben.
Hello. Yeah. Got big to swing on somebody. That's one or two turns of the night, you want to yeah, I know, I'll wax it.
Do you want to join their page?
You've got fun, you can just keep active.
Yeah. And the antiques.
they sort of overdid it slightly.
Right.
And then what happens is they ground down the cast to the correct specification to get them in line with each other.
Yeah.
And then they put these sacrificial liners in.
Like
so these are manganese liners, and if you look, there's a piece of neoprene between them.
Ah, right.
So you've got a manganese liner there that's just welded onto the cast.
Right.
And then that's the liner, and the box goes up and down the liner,
Yeah.
and that's how you keep your axle
And
true.
that's how it
So
keeps true.
that's it.
Right.
And obviously these slide up and down in the liners.
Yeah.
One thing we have to monitor with them is over time they get water down them, and then it begins to rust. And as the rust expands, it can actually grab the box, and if you go over some rough point work at speed, the box doesn't necessarily drop, and it can go the wrong side of the rail.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the problems that he was discussing, because they have, like, there's no damping on. The damping is not a shock absorber, but it's like the shims in here.
Right, okay.
And that's when you get that, you know, like our tanker trains, and when you hear them break, whoop, whoop,
Yeah, that's it.
and that's that friction bearing,
Yes.
which is a damping, which I never knew.
Yeah, we had
And they said they've got to watch that because there's a tolerance where
Yeah.
it can jam up.
we had a type here called the Gloucester pedestal suspension, and that basically worked on like rubber cones. As it went down, it sort
Right.
of got tighter.
Yeah.
And they reckon that if they had like a tank that was overloaded, and then it was relieved a few days later, they could sometimes get
Ah,
jammed, and then they were derailment.
Right. Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
But yeah, largely these are very good bogies. They're very
Yeah, well, they are based on theirs, because I said, well, I've always thought that ours looked very similar to yours, and,
Yeah.
and I said I didn't know, you know, whether we invented them and you copied, or whether it was like you invented and we copied. And,
I'm not overly sure. I mean,
you know, because I said our standard bogie was like a riveted plate
primitive.
bogie,
Yeah,
and then I
that's
said
right.
they came up with these.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you think that they're only a few years apart, these look space age in
Oh,
comparison.
yeah. I know everybody said these were best ones we ever had.
They ride
for
beautifully.
comfort, yeah.
The only problem is with them, they are an extremely heavy bogie,
Yeah.
and they really punish the track. And I don't believe, you know, like the national network appreciate them too much now, because they give the track a bit of a hammering.
Yeah. Because you've got like unsprung, well, I forget what they call it now, but like on locomotives, they have this unsprung massa, I think
That's
they
it,
call
yeah.
it, don't they, or something. Because that's when they did the traction motors in the Class 91, fitted them in the body, so you didn't have all that traction motor weight
Bashing,
bouncing up on
yeah,
rails.
that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, they're a substantial bit of kit. They're dead reliable.
Yeah, good.
The cast, I saw an accident with one from years ago, and the bogie had come out from under the coach, and it had hit a bridge, and it had bent it nearly in half, and it hadn't smashed it, because with cast you'd think it had shatter,
Yeah, you
but it
would.
didn't. It bent it.
bent it.
Yeah, I mean you'd never straighten it in a million years. But
No, but it's incredible that though, yeah. Yeah, I'm fascinated by railway accidents. You know,
yeah.
I mean, people think it's like gory, but I says no. I says you can learn so much
Well,
from.
this is it. I mean,
Because you know, why would you get a photograph of a coach bogie like that, or a
Yeah.
coach on its side, and get all the detail of it? you
well,
know?
that's it. And the thing I really appreciate with rail accidents is there's always something that comes out of it. There's always
there
a
is.
lesson.
Yeah, that's right.
The reason the railways are so safe now is literally 200 years of accidents.
It is, yeah. They're all things that have been, you know, refined, haven't they, over years? Yeah.
I mean, there's the little GC sub outside that's got a commemoration plaque on it for Quinchshill.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I'll have a look at that then.
I mean, obviously it wasn't involved in Quinchshill, it wouldn't be here.
Yeah. No, but it's that period, like.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'll have a good look at that.
so we've just gone to some colleagues just gone, we're going to get an angle grinder, we're going to cut the padlock off.
All right.
Frustrated.
Well, it is, yeah.
I come all the way from Derby to man it. Yeah,
It's a bit frustrating that then, yeah. Oh well. We'll have a look down there then.
Company ನಂಗೆ ಪೂರ್ಣ ಕಂಪ್ನಿ ಲೋಕಿ Oscar was saying, what is that loud noise?
我看他放火车头了，然后他把火车头放。 好了，手机给老爷，不看了。那边不要走了，就不要看了。还给老爷。哎，这里那个黄瓜没吃。对。这就咱讲。好，去看了啊，老爷手机了啊。
Right, We're all getting a load of water.
Good on. I'll tell you what's right.
City of Leicester Central. Yeah. Hold on.
Already. Have a look at 47, I need
Right, you go down first, Laura, but you hold on. Mummy's at the bottom.
Because I saw they dragged it up last time and this time, so I thought they were still working on it, you know.
Right,
And,
come down behind George.
yeah.
They're too big!
Okay.
Right, turn around.
There you go.
And then he's right behind you.
Goodbye.
Oh, you're right.
Everything will come apart. The cab will come off, the boring will come off.
Oh yeah. Yeah, beat it. No, it's thank you.
Hello.
That's the bit, the one that Daddy! The house going in the cafe!
Go with her. You better put you on.
So the one you have, then, normally the ones with the colour keyed up caps have got like the binnacle or pods in it now. And it's more of an open binnacle on
The colourless ones have gone to GVRF.
Right.
And then there's quite a lot preserved.
Yeah.
This one we built, I think it was 10 with an experimental power unit in it. That in the
So see if I can get it here. Right.
Maybe not. There's some seats on this one. Yeah. Do you put your videos on YouTube then?
Yeah.
We had a celebration down here at Loughborough. Boilers largely works finished, it just needs those tubes that connect to the firebox back in. And the frames we'll see when we get inside the shed, they're well on, so Salamio's quite well on its overhaul. As we go into the shed, there's a couple of things I must warn you about. There are inspection pits in the shed, and I'd love it if you didn't fall into it. The shed floor is also slippery with oil and water. It's not all our fault. I'll explain why a bit later. And in particular, we're working on the bearings, which are what goes on the wheels here. Now, we've done 6 of the 8, and that's what these are. They're called axle boxes, and they're an N-shaped piece of metal that sits on top of the axle there. This surface here, that sort of grey metal, is called white metal. It's a very soft, low melting point material, and they're used for bearing surfaces all over steam engines. When they get warm, we can literally melt them out, pull the metal back into a cauldron and cast a new piece, and then we will machine the bearings anew, and the workshop at the end of the works. And on top of it sits a curved piece of this white metal in our frame, and we want to get a really good fit, perfect fit onto that surface. And we use a material called engineer's blue. What that is a thin oil with some blue dye in it. And we paint it onto that axle there, and then we put the bearing on top of it. And we give the bearing a slight wiggle and take it off again. And wherever the white metal surface of the bearing is a little bit proud, there'll be a blue dot, because it's transferred the engineer's blue from one surface to the other. Now, white metal is soft enough to cut with the sharp knife, so you then go in with a sharp knife and take, wherever there's a blue spot, you take the blue spot off, put it back on again, give it another wiggle, have another go, and usually third time looking, instead of being dots of blue all over the surface, you've got a nice uniform blue line all the way down the length of the surface. And what that means is the two surfaces are so accurately aligned that they're good to the thickness of a thin film of oil. Automotive, the Class 04, it was built for service on the Great Central Railway here in 1912, so it's 113 years old, this loco. Freight trains at the time ran at sort of 10 to 15 miles an hour. 1,000 tonnes on the move, but very slowly is what you're looking at for freight trains back in the day. And the locomotives that hauled them had to be strong, robust, cheap to build, cheap to maintain, which the 04 certainly was. That's not to say that some of the surfaces, some of the bits of it weren't reasonably high standard engineering, and one of them is further to do with the bearings. Those axle boxes slide up and down in these slots in the frames to take up moves in the track. And these two surfaces here, that surface and that one there, are called horn sheets, and they have to be, for the axle box system to work, they have to be very accurately flat and very accurately parallel to each other. When this engine was built, firing, and it's nowhere near as long time to do it, so that's the 04 there. It springs on that pad. This is made of wool. These bits drip down into the oil, into an oil bath. The oil soaks up the wool onto the pad, and then the pad is spring irradiant, pushes it up on the underside of the axle, and that just wipes a little bit of oil on continuously onto the bearing, and then it drips off again, which is why we've got oil on the floor, because not all of it ends back up in the pad. But very has got quite bad corrosion on it. That will be cut out if necessary, patches put on, body filler used to fill it up. You can still just see there are some dents and dinges in the bodywork here that still need filling, and then ultimately you go into gloss. And as you walked up to the shed here, you may have seen Class 27 in beautiful, really shiny blue. That's what we're aiming for in the way of paint finish on the locos, steam and diesel. objects here are the springs. You sometimes see them under heavy lorries on the motorway. They're called laminated springs, and basically they're just steel plates which flex a little bit to take
We've had two of those made for our front Bogey on Hengist by Owen Springs, 4,500 each.
Yes.
So you tell you what, they're heavy as well.
Yep.
It's the right foot wreckers then.
Yes. And they do fraction.
Oh yeah.
We have to change them here on one of our fleets. More than once a year we'll have broken spring. Luckily, because broken springs were quite common, the design of the system for fixing them is designed so that you can easily change a spring. There aren't many bits and pieces that there's a pin that needs knocking out there and the one down here, and then it's easy to take them out and take the spring off, send it away for repair, and it isn't cheap, as the gentleman said, and fit a new one from a big pile that we have outside, because every spring's different for every loco and every bit of every loco. And they're jolly heavy. You don't change that one-handed. You're talking about, well, usually using forklift truck. So, part of the national collection, and I paused here for one or two things to use it to illustrate. One is tyres. Slabulous tyres are fine, but in general, the tyres on locomotives, on coaches, they wear, steel tyres wear, and when they get too warm, they have to be put on a huge great lathe and the wear machined out of them. We haven't got the equipment to do that here, so we have to take the wheels out to send them away. But eventually the tyre gets too warm to be machined at its profile. The tyre itself is scrapped, but the wheels fine. So we've had to put a new tyre on, and that's done in exactly the same way as you put a metal tyre on a cart wheel. You heat the tyre up, the tyre itself is just a thin ring of metal. You heat that up so it expands, and then you put the wheel into the centre of it, take the heat away, and it shrinks down and locks onto the wheel. And although Salamio doesn't need doing, it's quite common to have to send tyre wheels away for tyre turning or even tyre replacement. In a similar sort of vein, there's a job we need to do with the cylinders here. This is where the piston goes, where the steam generates thrust. And you can imagine a piston that's that diameter, that thick and made of steel, will start rubbing on the bottom of the cylinder itself here and wear it. And when it does, we can bore it out back circular again. We have a machine that clamps to these studs here, and we actually bore the cylinder in situ. But there comes a point where you can't take any more off it, and there isn't enough wall thickness there. And then on the face of it, that whole casting is scrapped, and castings this size are very, very expensive. You couldn't even find anybody to make them. Luckily, there's a solution to this. And just as you can put a new tyre on a wheel, so you can put a sleeve, or a sleeve inside the cylinder here, you're basically looking at a thin-walled piece of metal, that's tube of metal that fits into the ball there. And we arrange it, because it's got to be a very, very tight fit, we arrange it so that the outside diameter of the sleeve is very slightly bigger than the inside diameter of the bore, so it won't fit in room temperature. And then back in the day, what they did is they heated up the cylinder. So the cylinder expanded just like your tyre does, and then you could slip the sleeve in and let the cylinder cool down, and it clamps down onto it and locks it in place. There are two problems with that. You should be in the right place at the right time. Those need replacing, and the liners, the valve chest are in the workshop now, being machined ready to go in. And then on a nice quiet day when we haven't got ship tours around and nobody minding us, we'll cool them down in our liquid nitrogen. How long have we got? And those rods fit over that, you can see there's holes in each end. And you can imagine that gradually that hole will end up wearing, so you can turn it back circular again, but eventually there won't be enough left there to take forces. On the face of it, the whole of that forging will be scrapped. Luckily it's not, because this object here in the end is an insert. It's a brass insert called a bush. and you can basically just push the bush out, go into the workshop, get some more grass, machine yourself a new one, and push it in. Now, does anybody watch the repair shop?
Yes.
Steve would got me. Sometimes his pivots are a bit sloppy in the plate stock bottom and he fits the bush. And he has to put 2 pairs of specs in magnifiers head on, and he's pushing in something that's another metre in diameter. Same, exactly the same principle, except I don't need 2 pairs of specs. Not in my side. And so the locomotive we've got here in green is Boscastle. It's a West Country Pacific class locomotive. It was the first mainline steam engine to come down here to Loughborough when the railway first opened in 1973. It came from Barry Island scrapyard, where it had been standing for 7 or 8 years, rusting quietly by the sea. LS locomotive. This one's only just come out of its 10-year boiler certificate, so they're in the process of stripping it down to find out what it's doing, examining and repainting the frames to make sure there aren't any cracks, defects in it. So this is so that mill's at one end of the process and black fires at the other end. The locomotive was christened an ordinary Drake many years ago. Normally and when we've done all the preparation work on the surface and put 2 or 3 coats of gloss paint on, we'll end up with the surface you can see on the other side in green. We're just waiting for the boiler to come back, pop it on the frame, so we should be fairly quick to get the locomotive back in steam. I think you're going to have to knock off the tour at this point because I hope it's been an interesting half hour. Sorry to be I painted quite light. You don't have to and then come down here. Are there any particular questions anybody's burning?
Hello. Do you mind if I just have a quick look? Because I was in S&T. Been on shed tour and this is just nip up and ask, so if you're not too busy. Yeah, because I know it's...
We're just handing over as well.
Ah, right. Yeah, I'll just get a bit of video then.
Change over really. So this is something like this, like the danger comes back fast, isn't it? But yeah.
I'm surprised I'm not off demand.
Great.
They put the new top on it at work week, but we just got
Did they?
Stage parking.
Yeah.
Well, catch you on the next one, mate. Yeah.
It's all right.
See you later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to come back now. So, give a shot of that and then.
Central, this is Locomotive Central. The train platform 1 terminates here. All change, please, all change.
It's nice. I'll take that. I've got one of them. Yeah, well.
Right. Now,
Let's look at going through the door issue. The reservoir that was
far longer than the original Great Central Company, the LNER or British Railways did individually. Now it's time to look to the future. We're rebuilding and missing the 500-metre section of the railway so we can connect to another part of the line that's been preserved in Nottinghamshire. The end result will be a living museum of the railways that's 18 miles long, stretching across Nottinghamshire and Leicestershire. We call it reunification. After all this time, after so many twists and turns, the Great Central Railway adventure continues. And now you've been to visit, you're part of the story too. To find out what happens next, come back and see us again soon. half a century since the Great Central Railway was revived by people who didn't want to see it die. In this short film, we'll take a look at those very early days here at Loughborough Central and our first services along the line. It was always the ambition to save a main line and recreate it as authentically as possible. But in those early days, we had to make do with what was available. A green engine from Norwegian State Railways called King Haakon. Some early trains, run just for volunteers, were made up of no more than a British Railways brake van and a wooden carriage, also from Norway. Visitors to the very early open days were able to explore the skeleton of the locomotive shed, built swiftly to cover the derelict hulks of engines awaiting restoration. It was September 1973 when public trains began running to Bournemouth Woodhouse Station, an occasion marked by celebrations which included players from Leicester City Football Club of the day. By the time this young man came visiting, things were a little more established. Hard work had started to transform Loughborough Central Station. Now there were carriages, all surplus from